is something that was perfectly acceptable 30 years ago, but would be extremely taboo or offensive now. Story 1. My high school had a smoking section outside. You had to be 18 to buy cigarettes, but everybody there was under 18. It was supervised by paraprofessionals. The same high school had an indoor swimming pool. Gym classes were segregated boys and girls. The boys swam naked. The idea of bringing a swimsuit from home was not acceptable. Insane and true. Story 2. Parents letting their kids roam around the block. Nowadays, the same boomers that let the kids roam free call the cops when they see a group of kids playing. Story 3. Showing anything happened to the Twin Towers. An episode of The Simpsons was pulled from syndication and heavily edited after 911 because it showed Homer running between both towers, and the ending of Lilo and Stitch had to be remade as the spaceship looked too much like an airplane flying too close to buildings. Story 4. Sometime around 1995 or so I was randomly wandering around downtown New York with my brother and a friend on New Year's Day. We happened to be near the old World Trade Center, so we decided to see if we could go to the roof. We walked in and the security desk, which may well have just been a reception desk, was unmanned, but everything was open. We took an elevator up, easily got to the roof, hung out there for a while, and came down and left. No alarms, no locks, no security. Beyond unthinkable now. Story 5. This question and the responses about making fun of gay people are reminding me of that Reductress article whose headline was like "Girl who called you in high school so excited to see Chapel Roan." Edit. Sorry everyone, it was actually from a Hard Times News. Story 6. Business lunches during work hours with alcohol being consumed. Apparently it used to be worse. Older colleagues tell me the 3-martini lunch really was a thing in the 60s and 70s, and they claimed they would return to their office and be productive. Story 7. Fat shaming. You were considered overweight and unfull if you were even slightly above average size. It doesn't seem to be an issue with today's young people. There were insane diets published in all the teen and women's magazines. Eating disorders were so common they would only get attention if you were anorexic to the point of hospitalization. Story 8. Hitting your children with belts, switches, and paddles. I remember my babysitter had a wooden paddle she would hit her kids with when they misbehaved. She would check their pants for books before, and they would get more if they tried. Being allowed to go hang out without adults. I remember just hanging out at playgrounds without an adult. It was completely normal to go hang out at a park without supervision. Now a kid can't be out of eyesight or it's considered child neglect, which is absolutely insane to me. Story 9. Smoking on airplanes was a thing. Smoking with us in the car and windows rolled up was as well. So glad I dodged that addiction wave. Backtalk to kids. If you are a teen adult, there will be always someone calling you a creep. Story 10. Bars on college campuses was real thing. Drinking age was 18, so everyone was able to grab a cold 1 or 2 or 3 etc. Whoops, probably not 30 years ago, more like 40 years ago. I'm old. Story 11. Looking an acquaintance up in the phone book and calling their house to speak with them. Now a lot of people think it's creepy or weird if you text or call someone's number and they didn't give it to you. Story 12. Saying that Nazis should be shot. Now when I suggest this I get told that I'm encouraging political violence and that I should respect the First Amendment. Story 13. Blackface. I remember seeing an ad for a type of orange fizzy drink on a tape from 1992 that had literally every single one of the most offensive but pre-watershed stereotypes for black people in it. And like, this wasn't some obscure channel, it was an ITV broadcast of a Guns N' Roses concert. Story 14. Harassment in the workplace. It was just something women had to navigate. I have a Richard Pryor album called Kentucky Fried N with a heart, or he used it to his advantage. I got it as a Christmas present. Oh, that would be almost 50 years. Story 15. Not sure it was perfectly acceptable, but teachers dating students. My high school art teacher told us all about how he proposed to his wife while she was in his classroom. Granted, they probably got together more like 40 years ago, but it seems just wild thinking back about how in the 90s everyone just shrugged and thought that was a bit weird. Story 16. Very not acceptable and in bad taste. However, it was wildly accepted by everyone at my high school. At least everything that sucked or bad was labeled as gay. I'm sure that was pretty universally used way back when. The next, I have no idea if it was just our school or what, but when people were tired of gay, everything became Jewish. Story 17. Calling someone the R slur. Even Napoleon Dynamite, which was made to be a clean, family-friendly film 20 years ago, had the R slur in it. Personally, I'm quite happy it's stigmatized now, though it sucks it seems to be making a comeback. Story 18. I'm speaking more about when I was young, which would have been just a bit more than 30 years ago. Kids leaving their house on a Saturday morning and not coming home until the streetlights came on. I mean, we had to say who we were going to be with and all, but we didn't have to stay in our own yards. Story 19. I recall there being car phones. This was before mobile phones were around popular. This was a way to be able to receive calls while driving a car. Story 20. I would say that it was a lot more socially acceptable to make fun of Islam. Ironically, US tightened the screws on anti-Islamism post 9/11. As not to turn it into a religious war. Story 21. My first grade teacher in 1991 would sing us happy birthday with us standing on a chair in front of the room. Then she would give us birthday spankings, 1 for each year and a pinch to grow an inch. I had the first birthday in the school year and was completely mortified by the whole experience. Story 22. That depends on in which country. You can very well still openly say that you beat your wife up if she isn't cooking what you like in Afghanistan, e.g. Story 23. The official unofficial mascot of my high school, Bishop Lynch, was the lynch mob. It was a skeleton in a black hood carrying a noose. The other school color was white, so I guess that a tough choice for them. It is a private school in Texas founded a few years after public school desegregation. Take that as you may. They allowed that mascot to exist until 2002-ish when we officially became the Fighting Fairs. Story 24. Protect yourself and others against infectious diseases. For example, by wearing face shield, COVID would not have been allowed free range as it is today. Story 25. Sending your kid to buy cigarettes at the corner store. Edit. Hold on, am I old? Sending kids to the corner store to buy cigarettes was a 70s and 80s thing, not a 90s thing. Oh, I'm old. Story 26. In the South this was common but not allowed at all today. During hunting season folks would bring their shotguns to school and leave them in the truck so we could get together after to go hunting or just shooting. Story 27. Dating coworkers. I always tell my wife that we likely would not have dated or even be married if it was in today's climate, because we were coworkers. She was an administrative assistant, and I was a senior manager. I thought I was on the partner track in a professional services firm. Today, after the Me Too movement, being afraid of having my career tainted by he said, she said allegations if something goes awry or is misunderstood, and having to discuss and register relationships with HR, I probably would not date people I worked with today. Story 28. Taking advantage of a girl who was passed out. While technically a crime, the general consensus was that if she didn't want dudes to have their way with her, then she shouldn't drink so much. Story 2995. Smoking sections inside restaurants were still very much a thing, and often enough had to walk through it to the non-smoking section, partitioned by a shoulder-high wall. Story 30. When I was in primary school, boys and girls shared the gym locker room or changing room. There were no lockers and showers up to and including grade 6 in my school in Sweden. I've heard stories of boys in other schools sneaking a peek at the girls, while in my school they were literally right next to us. Story 31. Kids getting paddled in schools. Maybe it's a southern thing, but I mean even for me growing up in the 2000s it was extremely normal to get paddled or see people get paddled at school. I mentioned this to some friends a few years ago and they couldn't believe that would occur. Story 32. FYI for my fellow old folks. 30 years ago was 1995. Gangsta's Paradise was the one song. Die Hard with a Vengeance was the top grossing movie, followed closely by Toy Story. Story 33. In 1997, I got through international customs at the airport by just showing the agent a picture of myself from a work pamphlet. I explained to the agent I had just lost my wallet the day before, and she let me through. Story 34. Playing with toy guns. Can't find a toy gun as an adult to fidget with at home. There was this really cool one that can just had this loud snap when you pulled it, and I'm really bummed at myself for not getting one. All the toy guns are meh and the adult versions are hella expensive since they're pretty realistic. There's no middle ground for a cheap toy gun that isn't functional but could still make some sounds. Story 35. In the UK, police didn't keep record of any allegation that didn't lead to a conviction until 1995 when a man, Ian Huntley, who had been accused of multiple attacks on children, was able to get a job at a school and subsequently murder 2 children. We have so much more safeguarding now. Schools did not have ID cards, robust sign-in systems, anything like that. Story 36. Whether that was acceptable 30 years ago doesn't offend someone today, except that claptrap friends. Almost every TV show, film, book or magazine is declared they couldn't make that in today's world by the media or some new Puritan. They say that, although I don't see much reduction in sites and do see a proliferation in erotic self-published novels, people still watch or read it but doesn't want to get called out by the leftist anti-league, the right-wing new traditionalist shomophobes or by the Hollywood Reporter Huff Perone and Farrow. That your boss at a restaurant could tell you to go get a good padded bra, cause customers liked it better. Smoking in bars and smoking sections in restaurants, cigarette machines. Story 37. 30 years ago would make me around 13 years old, so freedom of mobility and activity. As long as I came home before the lights came on, the entire city, and what a city, Houston was my stomping ground. I lived in inner city Montrose at the corner of Missouri and Montrose. The furthest I ever rode my bike from home was typically to the Astrodome area to go to events and Astroworld. This of course was all before the rail system was even considered. I milled about the streets of Houston every single day, anywhere and everywhere. I can still navigate most of the city from memory. Childish crimes were committed all. Story 38. When I was in school in the 90s, the high school had a communal shower in the men's locker room. The junior high did as well. Every day after gym, all the boys were required to shower together. I thought it was weird. Those schools are still that way. I don't have kids so I don't even know if it's still that way. Story 39. Hitting and yelling at your child. Studies have shown this is a short-term solution with long-term damages. Take it from someone who grew up in a house with a dad who yelled. Story 40. Leaded gas was still around. I'm wondering if millennials seem to be aging well is because we've hit a good blend of lead, asbestos and microplastics. Story 41. Fun tonight at Northampton Road Services. I teach at a rural school. Well into the 90s, kids will go hunting in the morning and come to school with a rifle or a shotgun in the gun rack in their truck and park in the school parking lot. No one cared. In the old shop, there was a bullet hole in the ceiling because a kid brought a rifle in that he was having trouble with for the teacher to help him, and it went off and shot a hole through the wall just below the ceiling. Story 42. Smoking in hospitals. I was watching Steel Magnolias, which was released in 1989, While everyone is waiting for news of the kidney removal transplant, we sir casually lights up in the surgical waiting room, WTH. Story 43 comedy movies from the late 90s early 2000s have jokes that could never be aired today. Rush Hour, Not Another Teen Movie, White Chicks, Scary Movie, etc.